The anime begins with an action scene where it seems that a very important man is in danger, but luckily for him, a special agent appears and rescues him. Then the scene changes, and a cute silver-haired waifu is walking alone and lost on the street. Unintentionally, she runs into some young men who are passing by and apologizes to them. But they don't accept her apologies and try to get aggressive with her, but then they realize that she is actually a cute waifu and want to ask her out. But the girl is scared and just wants to be left alone. At that moment, our protagonist Junichi appears, who is doing some shopping nearby, and tells the guys to leave the waifu alone because they are bothering her. But when the guys realize who she is, they get scared and start asking her for forgiveness, asking her to please not send them to the hospital, because apparently our protagonist has a reputation for being a badass. He tells them not to exaggerate, that he would never actually hurt anyone, but the boys run away. However, our protagonist's courage immediately captivates the waifu, who is intrigued by how a guy with a reputation for being aggressive could be so kind and have saved her from those bullies. She asks him why those guys called him Geno Killer, but he acts disinterested and tells her that those are just lies. A limousine appears and a butler arrives who knows our waifu, and we realize that she comes from a very wealthy family. The butler threatens our protagonist and tells him that if he did something to the waifu, he would have a very bad time with him. But the girl tells him not to be rude, that in reality he had saved her, while our protagonist, all disinterested, walks home. When we arrive at the protagonist's house, we meet his sister Manato, who is also a waifu. She is very upset because her brother had not done the homework he was supposed to do before starting the second semester of school. The main character apologizes, and his sister tells him that when he does his homework, he can watch his favorite horror marathon, but he falls asleep while watching one of the movies and has a nightmare about the silver-haired waifu he had saved on the street, and he regretted being selfless and not even asking her name. The next day, our main character falls asleep and has to go on a bike carrying his sister to get to class early. When we get to school, we meet one of his classmates, Sukasa, who is also a waifus. Wow, there are a lot of waifus here, if you think about it. And in the classroom, we meet his best friend. When the teacher arrives, he begins to bother our main character and embarrass him in public for not having done his homework before starting the semester, and he tells him that he knows because he talked to his sister Manato. After teasing Jun, the teacher decides to introduce the boys to a new classmate, and it turns out that the new girl was actually the silver-haired waifu that our main character had saved the day before, and there we find out that her name is Yuuhi Katagiri. She immediately recognizes Jun and tells him in front of everyone her nickname, Geno Killer. The teacher asks her how she knows him, and she tells him that he had saved her the day before from some very annoying boys. Yuuhi goes to take a seat and does so next to the rich girl in the class who had a lot of money but less money than her. When class ends, Yuuhi goes directly to where the main character is sitting and tells him that she hasn't stopped thinking about him and that she would like to invite him out for tea. This surprises the entire class because it seems that our main character is actually not very popular. The next day, Jun's relationship with our waifu was the main topic of conversation in the classroom, and all the girls start pressuring the girl to confess what she feels for Jun. At that moment, our main character arrives and Sukasa takes him by the hand and leads him to where the girl is and tells him to make a decision about their relationship. Our main character gets all nervous and starts having an internal duel with himself about what he should do. And so without thinking, he decides not to tell her anything and goes and plants a nice kiss on her mouth, which leaves everyone in the classroom surprised. But Yuuhi isn't happy at all, since that was her first kiss, and it had been terrible, so she beats Jun up. Later that night, Jun tells his sister Manato what happened, and she scolds him again for having embarrassed the poor girl like that. And then there's a knock on the door, and Manato comes out to see who it was, and it turns out that it was our Yuuhi, who arrived with a small suitcase and tells them both that from now on she will live with them as Jun's fiancée. Yuuhi is in front of Junichi and Minato's house to tell them that from now on she will live with them, since she is the fiancée of our protagonist, which is a disappointment for her since she did not expect him to be an idiot who would steal a kiss from her in such a shameless way. Then we see a flashback where Yuuhi-san is talking to her father, and he tells her that he has already found her a fiancé. She is very upset since she does not even know the person she's going to marry, and he tells her that it does not matter, since she must do it for the sake of the future of her powerful family. Then she tells him to at least give her the opportunity to meet him, and the father agrees, telling her that he will allow her to spend a few days with the boy so that she can get to know him. Then we return to the present, and Yuuhi is telling Junichi and his sister what her father had told her, because apparently our protagonist is a member of a powerful family too. At that point, Jem receives a call from his father to tell him that he had gotten him a fiancé, but he tells him that it's too late to tell him since he had already met her, and he gets very upset with his father for making these decisions without warning or consulting him. So Yuuhi and Juniko are doomed to be together for the rest of their lives, but our waifu is a little toxic and starts arguing with her future husband. So Manato intervenes and tells Yuuhi that he will take her to the supermarket to prepare lunch. During their outing together, Yuuhi and Manato become very close and form a nice friendship since Manato empathizes with Yuuhi and understands her emotions in addition to teaching her a little about his new lifestyle. But when they get back home, peace vanishes since Junichi doesn't stop acting like a jerk. While they're arguing, a short circuit occurs and the power goes out for a moment and the couple of protagonists fall and Jun's hand rests on Yui's boobs. This makes her very angry and she applies a judo lock, but Jun, instead of getting upset, actually enjoys the physical contact. After that, they start eating and Junichi tries the curry that his fiancée had prepared with his sister and tells them that it actually turned out really good. Later in the room, Manato and Yuuhi continue talking and Manato tells him a little about why Junichi is a jerk, since for family reasons he had to grow up away from mom and dad, and they show us a photo of his parents and we see that the dad looks a lot like the special agent from the action scenes. However, Yuuhi still thinks that he's actually a jerk. It's been a long day and after one last argument with her fiancé, Yuuhi falls asleep in the living room while Manato and Junichi laugh about everything that has happened to them that day. Yuuhi and Junichi continue another day in their typical fight of fiancés who can't stand each other, but when they get to the classroom this loses importance since the president of the student council, who is another green-haired waifu, needs our protagonist to help her in a special mission. It turns out that Professor Subishita, the hottie who always bothers the main character in class, had been missing for a day, and that no one had seen him either at school or at home in all this time. However, the last place they saw him was in an area of the school full of old classrooms that was already closed, and it was forbidden to enter there. So the president asks Junichi, along with Sukasa and the rest of his classmates, to enter the abandoned area of the school to investigate what had happened to Professor Subishita, whom all the waifus in the classroom were very fond of. So the main character and his friends had no choice but to accept their mission. As they were about to enter, they realized that Yuuhi and Karen were spying on them and decide to accompany them on their adventure. But Karen, our blonde waifu, is very scared. And when Sukasa starts making up horror stories about the place, she wants to run away in terror. In the meantime, we see another action scene of the Nagase brothers' parents, who we still don't understand what they're doing, but we assume it's something very important. Returning to the search mission for Professor Subishita, our group of investigators decide to split up into pairs to search better, and they draw lots in which it turns out that Junichi and Yuuhi are paired up. However, this draw was arranged by Sukasa, who wanted to pair them up to leave them alone and spy on them to see what kind of relationship they were hiding, because none of them knew yet that they were actually engaged since they kept it a secret. However, in the blink of an eye, our couple of protagonists disappears from the radar of their friends and they enter a room where they meet Nagomi, a new pink-haired waifu who was really weird because she hadn't told them, but she has been spying on our couple from the shadows since the beginning. In addition, Nagomi turns out to be Minato-chan's classmate, which allows her to gain the trust of the protagonists, and she also tells them that she knows where Professor Subishita is. However, it was all a trap, and she makes them fall through a hole in the floor straight into a cell from which they can't get out. Everyone begins to worry about Yuuhi and Junichi, who don't appear anywhere, and during his time alone, Junichi tries to express to his fiancée his feelings and how this situation has also been sudden for him, but the waifu is very toxic and they end up fighting once again. However, to their surprise, in the cell they were in was also Professor Subishita, who was asleep and was woken up by their fighting. He tells them that he had a fight with the landlord of his apartment and had to start sleeping in the abandoned part of the school because he had nowhere to go. Shortly after, Minato-chan arrives to save the day and rescue everyone from the cell they were in. But then we see that Nagomi is talking to someone to inform them that she had successfully approached Junichi and Yuuhi, and that she will continue to inform them about everything soon. It's a new day at school and the blonde-haired waifu Karen gathers everyone together to inform them that they will be invited to the ostentatious party that her family usually organizes every year on a luxurious cruise ship. Everyone agrees to go except Junichi, but Karen wasn't going to take no for an answer and decides to invite Manato, who evidently ends up forcing the protagonist to attend. However, when everyone arrives at the party, they are dressed very casually and completely out of place with the other guests. But Karen had everything planned, so she takes the waifus to her room and offers them everything in her huge wardrobe so they could dress according to the occasion. When everyone finishes getting ready, they go down to the living room where Junichi was waiting to see them. The first to go down is Manato, who was gorgeous with a cleavage that showed off her, and her brother is fascinated by her and even has a new duel inside him to clarify the incestuous desires he has for his sister. But in the end, he doesn't accept them and just uses the excuse that he's jealous for being his sister and approaches Manato and tells him not to dress like that because men could get carried away with her. However, Yuuhi realizes that the main character hadn't praised the other waifus like his sister and runs away again like a good toxic girlfriend. Manato goes out to look for her, and when he finds her, they go through the kitchen and discover that the cooks have serious problems working since the ship moves a lot and they get dizzy, so Manato offers to help them prepare the food. Meanwhile, Karen decides to start a round of very bad jokes while Manato was preparing the food, and just when the guests were about to die of boredom, Manato appears with a giant tuna and puts on a show of impressive cuts that cheer up the audience. But our blonde waifu Karen, who is apparently a bit spoiled, is jealous because Manato is being the center of attention at the party, so she decides to draw attention to herself with a stupid show with the fake squid, which actually scares Yuuhi, who runs away in terror and falls on top of the controls that activate the fireworks. This incident caused a fire throughout the ship. Everyone was safe. But when Junichi asked about his sister, they tell him that she is still inside, so our main character takes out all the hidden skills he inherited from his spy father and goes in to rescue her. But when he finds her, she tells him that Yuuhi is also missing, so the main character must use his skills again to rescue his toxic fiancée. Luckily, everything turns out well in the end, and our hero rescues his silver-haired waifu. It's just another day at the Nagase's house and Yuuhi is talking to Manato. Then our protagonist tells Manato that she only has eyes for her brother, and then Junichi comes in and makes a double entendre comment that only gives Yuuhi more reasons to be suspicious. Junichi tells her not to be stupid, that she's only acting like that because she's his sister, and tells them that she won 2 tickets to see a movie and wants to take her. To which our toxic waifu responds with a tantrum because Junichi hadn't invited her, so in the end they have no choice but to plan a 3-way outing. However, Manato already had plans with his friends, so in the end he abandons them and our protagonists end up going out alone. They arrive at the cinema and finish watching the movie, and when they leave they find some bullies who want to make fun of Yuuhi, so our main character Jun gets serious and uses his alpha male voice to intimidate them, which Yuuhi likes a lot. They leave the cinema and start walking through the park. And while they do so, they talk about their trip and start getting along really well. But then the student council president Mitsuki walks in and surprises them. They ask her to please keep it a secret and not tell anyone, so they run away so no one else sees them. On the way home, Yui's hat flies off and lands on a rock over a lake, and our main character shows off again to get his fiancée's hat back, but ends up falling into the river and saves the hat but also catches a cold in the process. When she gets home, Yuuhi is desperate because she doesn't know what to do to make Junichi feel better, but luckily, Manato appears and gives his brother his energy back with a bowl of ramen. Yuuhi is surprised by the healing abilities of Manato's food and wants to present them to her family's doctors. At night, Yuuhi is pensive because she is very surprised by how independent the Nagase brothers are, and while she always needs help to do everything. So she decides that from now on she will be much more independent and do things on her own. The next morning, Junichi is preparing breakfast and Yuuhi is surprised again because a single bowl of Manato's ramen completely changed our protagonist's mood. Then they go to school, and when they arrive they realize that Mitsuki did not keep his promise and told everyone in the classroom that he had seen them on a romantic date that confirmed their relationship. At that moment, Yuuhi begins to think about how lucky she is to spend this time with her friends since her childhood had been very lonely because of how strict her father was. So she starts to cry with happiness. Everyone worries about her, but Yuuhi answers them with a smile that everything is fine. Karen wants to redeem herself for the disaster that her luxury family cruise party ended up in, so she has invited all of her friends to a few days off at her family's luxury hotel, so they all go on a modern bus to their destination. Upon arrival, Karen tells them that her hotel is traditionally themed, so she tells them to change into kimonos. So she takes everyone back to a huge wardrobe to choose the outfit they like the most. After everyone gets dressed, they go down to the hotel lobby and there is Junichi, who is again shocked to see how beautiful his sister Manato looks in the kimono that Karen-san lent him. So everyone starts to tease him about it again and calls him a perv. However, everyone starts to get bored and Junichi starts staring out the window, which makes Karen-chan very anxious as she didn't want her classmates to get bored like they did during the yacht party. So Karen decides to reveal her secret weapon and tells them that she has prepared a surprise so they don't get bored, and that it is a nature excursion to find Karen's family jewel, the Healing Hot Springs. Then everyone heads to the secret hot springs at Karen's family hotel, and when they arrive, she confesses that the hot springs are actually a mixed bath and that everyone will have to go in together, which makes Junichi very uncomfortable as he didn't want to bathe with the girls because that would bring bad thoughts to him. Suddenly they hear a noise and Manato says it's a bear, so he asks everyone to stay behind her and takes out the skills he learned in the jungle with his spy parents to locate the bear and go hunt it, and when he does, he runs away. Junichi worries about his sister, so he decides to run after her, and everyone goes after him. But when they get to where Manato was, they realize that she was very calm bathing with the bear and her cub that was hurt. After the bear leaves, everyone decides to go into the bathroom, but they do it separately, and they tell Junichi not to even think about looking. but Mitsuki-san starts bothering Sukasa to make sounds to provoke Junichi. So our main character again has an internal duel to resist his impulses, and in the end he decides that he definitely wants to see the women while they bathe, but when he does it's too late because all the girls have already left and are dressed. So in the end everyone thanks Karen for inviting them to her luxurious hotel, and our blonde waifu feels very happy because she managed to make up for the mistakes of her previous party on this excursion with her friends. The day of the cultural festival at school has arrived, so our protagonist's class must prepare a typical Chinese dish, yakisoba. However, Yuuhi doesn't know how to cook and doesn't know much about the different types of yakisoba that exist, so Manato offers to teach her. When they arrive at school, the festival begins. All the classes must prepare the dish that they were assigned and then sell it to raise funds. However, Junichi is not with them since President Manato along with Professor Subishida have kidnapped him since they have a special mission for him at this festival, possibly the most important of all. After several attempts, they manage to prepare a yakisoba worthy of being sold, so they begin to open their food stand, but they realize that no one visits them to buy their food, so they decide to take a look at the other stands to see how they are doing. As expected, Minato's stand was full of people since being served by pretty girls attracted a lot of attention and all the men wanted to try their delicious food. This greatly disappoints the boys. However, Fuyuliko has an idea to sell more food, and it consists of having the girls dress provocatively like kittens to attract as much attention as Manato. This idea does not work as expected, so they decide to change her outfit for a maid outfit, which also does not work. So they take the extreme measure of dressing in a swimsuit, which does work, and they can finally sell many more dishes of yakisoba. Manato arrives to see how the boys are doing, and tells them that she was worried since her brother Junichi does not appear anywhere, but our protagonist continues on his special mission that we still do not know what it is, but it seems very important. So everyone leaves the classroom and is summoned to attend a final event of the festival in the school playground, and when they arrive there is President Mitsuki with Professor Subishida to present the final act. Then the giant octopus that scared Yuuhi at Karen's yacht party appears, and then from the trees emerges a powerful giant robot that was commanded by Junichi inside. He prepares to perform an impressive movement, but the robot can't stand up and ends up falling to the ground, being a complete disaster. Meanwhile, while Junichi was fighting with the giant robot, we saw another of his father's action scenes that we still don't know why he does it, but we assume it will be something important. We see a flashback of a younger Junichi talking by a river. That a new day begins at school where events for the cultural festival are still being held, and Fuyuhiko says that it's all thanks to Sukasa being more responsible and being able to organize things that in the past were only organized by President Mitsuki, so everyone congratulates her as well. Then we see another one of Junichi and Minato's dad's action scenes, who's escaping from a ship. Back at school, they reveal a funny photo that was taken the day before of Yuuhi beating up Jun after the giant robot fell apart, so everyone is laughing at it. But Yuuhi is not at all happy that that photo won a prize at school. On the way home, Sukasa starts to tease Jun, but Jun had already prepared a counterattack and tells her that he also remembers that when they were children, Sukasa liked to dress up as a famous artist and take pictures, which makes her the one who gets embarrassed in front of everyone. Upon arriving home, Sukasa thinks about what Jun told her since she didn't expect him to remember that time when they played as a child. The next morning at school, the boys must make the difficult decision of choosing what career they should choose for college, so Sukasa makes the decision to become an idol. All this because she was inspired by the words Junichi had told her the day before. At the Nagase house, a new and silly fight between the most famous fiancés in the world is taking place. However, at that moment, there is a knock at the door. It's about Sukasa, who is looking for Junichi, so Yuuhi has to hide in the closet to avoid being discovered since no one in the classroom knew that she lived with Manato and Jun. When Sukasa enters, she sees Junichi alone in his room and asks him to please help her with something important, which leaves our protagonist a little baffled. What our orange-haired waifu wanted was for Jun to help her take some photos for her idol audition. This takes Jun by surprise, who doesn't understand why she asks him, to which she responds that she thought he was the person she could feel most comfortable with, since she would also have to take a photo of him in a swimsuit. Junichi's perverted mind can't stop imagining what Sukasa would look like in a school swimsuit, so she decides that maybe it would be best for Manato-san to take the photos. After that, everyone at school begins to help Sukasa prepare for her audition to be an idol. However, things don't go so well, and she ends up failing her audition, as she got very nervous and lost her voice. Then we go back to the flashback with which the chapter began, and we realize that the woman who accompanied Jun in front of the lake was Sukasa, who was a friend of her childhood and practically her whole life. Back in the present, Sukasa is sitting right in front of the lake that we were shown in the previous memory, and a short time later, Junichi arrives to cheer her up and tell her that he really remembers fondly all those years in her childhood. His words serve as encouragement to Sukasa, who decides not to give up and recharges her energies to try again in the next audition. At that moment, Yuuhi and Manato arrive and everyone happily goes home to eat. Manato has prepared a delicious dessert for all of her classmates. They are fascinated by her baking skills, and she tells them that she is practicing since Junichi's birthday is coming up soon, and she wants to practice making him a delicious cake. This clearly makes Yuuhi very nervous, as she did not expect her visit to coincide with the first birthday of her fiancé, who she had hated until then. At that moment, Fujiko enters, distressed since something very bad had happened to Jun, so everyone runs out to see what it was. And it turns out that someone posted the photo of Yuuhi hitting Jun after the festival and had made them win in a prize category of the event. This obviously upsets Yuuhi a lot, as she did not want the photo to become more famous, since until then only her classmates had seen it. Later, at the Nagase's house, Manato and Yuuhi are talking about the preparations for our protagonist's birthday party, and Manato tells Yuuhi that he has a special mission for her for this event, and it is to choose the perfect gift for Jun, to which she accepts and says that she will do her best. In that, we return to one of the action scenes of the Nagase's father, who is about to save someone, but Nagase's mother tells him to remember that tomorrow will be Junichi's birthday, so as a good father he leaves everything he is doing and goes to buy him a nice gift. Back with our protagonists, Yuuhi is asking all of Jun's friends what would be the perfect gift for him, but unfortunately nothing they tell her convinces her, so she makes a risky decision based on an idea that Karen gave her: infiltrate Jun's room to find out what he likes or what he needs. So in the afternoon of that day, while Junichi was out of the house, Yuuhi sneaks into his room and starts searching absolutely everything, but unfortunately, she realizes that Jun already has everything he could need, so she continues searching. Looking behind a bookcase, she finds Junichi's collection of adult magazines, and for some strange reason, she is very interested in what she sees, and just then Manato discovers her snooping around his brother's room. After that, Yuuhi confesses to Manato that she doesn't know what to give Jun, so she tells him not to worry, that a gift doesn't always have to be a material object. A gesture also counts, so she tells him that a nice gesture would be to prepare the birthday party cake. Yuuhi has no idea how to cook, but Manato gives her a recipe book so she can follow it to the letter. Junichi prepares to return home, but Manato and Yuuhi don't let him in and tell him to leave for at least 3 hours. In that time, they could prepare the whole surprise. 3 hours pass, and our protagonist decides to return home again and finds his surprise party. Everyone starts giving him their gifts and congratulating them, except Yuuhi, who is in the kitchen embarrassed because the cake she made was not very big and attractive compared to other gifts. At that moment, Junichi's parents' gift arrives, which turned out to be an ugly giant totem, and inside it was a nice ring for Manato, who is obviously Dad's favorite. Then it's time to receive Yuuhi's gift, and Junichi, without saying many words, goes and takes a bite and doesn't say anything but smiles. The others also try the cake and realize that it had turned out horrible, but Junichi kept eating nonstop, which bothers Yuuhi because she felt that he was doing it just to not make her feel bad. Then Junichi shows off in front of everyone again and tells her that he doesn't care what the others say, he likes the cake, and it's delicious just because she put so much effort into making it. Everyone is very touched by Jun's words to Yuuhi, except Manato, who remembers that it was the same cake she had made for him on previous birthdays, and seeing his brother happy about someone else's cake made him jealous, jealousy that didn't let her enjoy the party like everyone else. Nagomi is writing a detailed report on Junichi and Yuuhi's relationship and how it has evolved so far. Meanwhile, at the Nagase's house, Junichi steps out in a super small towel in front of Yuuhi, causing her to blush, and Manato to scold him for not wearing pants at home. Yuuhi goes to take a shower and starts to question herself about her feelings for Junichi, as she was supposed to come to meet him to hate him. But for some reason, she couldn't get him out of her head all day, despite him being selfish and selfless towards her on many occasions. Coming out of the bathroom, she feels bad and decides to lie down in her room, and Junichi notices and decides to take care of her so she feels better. This gives them a moment to talk and continue to strengthen their bond. Jun tells her he's going out, but she impulsively grabs his arm and asks him to stay a little longer. After an awkward silence, both are sitting on the edge of the bed, and in that moment, Yuuhi can no longer contain her emotions and confesses completely to Jun, who tells her that everything had been a misunderstanding since he also liked her a lot from the first moment he saw her, and if he dared to kiss her, it was because he really liked her. While this happens, Nagomi is doing a detailed analysis of Jun and Yuuhi's relationship, raising interesting existential questions about romantic relationships at school age. Back with our protagonists, Yuuhi gets a little upset to tell Jun some things and shows off again by giving her a kiss at that moment, and there they decide to formalize their relationship and agree for the first time to go out together. Upon arriving at school, Sukasa completely discovers that they are in a relationship, and in a few minutes everyone has found out that Yuuhi and Junichi are officially boyfriends. During the evening, Jun is talking to Fuyuhiko on the stairs of the schoolyard, and suddenly our blue-haired friend becomes serious and tells Junichi that he must make a decision about the feelings he has for his sister, that he was not going to be able to deceive him because he has realized that he is actually deeply in love with Manato, and he cannot go around being Yui's boyfriend if he really loves someone else because otherwise no one will be happy in that relationship. At night, Yuuhi sneaks into Jun's room again since she wanted to surprise him by making a nice cosplay for him. But it doesn't go as she expected, and Jun tells her that she shouldn't do it. But that moment of intimacy served for Jun to open up even more with her and confess that he does indeed have feelings for her. The next day, Yuuhi must return to her parents' house to deliver a report of her experience with her fiancé so that the wedding procedures can be expedited. After a long time, Manato and Jun are alone again in the house. Jun tells him that before leaving he had told Yuuhi that they were dating, and Manato collapses on top of Junichi and tells him that it's okay, but to please let her hug him again, just one more time. After Manato confessed to Jun, things have not been the same at the Nagase residence, and there is even a bit of tension between the siblings despite the fact that they have always lived together. Meanwhile, at the Katagiri's house, Yuuhi is talking to her father about how her experience was meeting the fiancé he had found for her, and tells him that she will completely annul the engagement, which upsets her father a lot. However, Yuuhi makes it clear to her father that she has not decided to break the engagement because she is not going to marry Junichi. On the contrary, she tells him that in the days she has shared with him, she has met a person who has completely won her heart, but that she is going to marry him because she loves him, and not because her father forces her to. Immediately after that, she returns to the Nagase house, where she is greeted by Manato and Jun, who are having breakfast. Everything seems normal, but Yuuhi realizes that something is happening as she feels that the atmosphere is a little strange. So when she's left alone with Manato, she asks him if something happened between her and his brother while he was away, to which Manato replies that everything is fine and that nothing has happened, but his attitude creates serious doubts in Yuuhi. So our toxic girlfriend goes to Junichi, and after a brief conversation, she tells him that she feels like something isn't right and wants to know if he has anything to tell her. But our main character tries to show off again by making her feel important to him. He hugs her and tells her that everything is fine. However, Yuuhi still feels that things are not right at all and tells him to please be honest and confess if something happened with him and Manato while he was away. This surprises Junichi a lot, and his doubts completely give him away, so our silver-haired waifu runs away and doesn't want to talk to him anymore. Later at school, everyone notices that Jun is alone for the first time in several days, and they ask him why he's not with Yuuhi. At that moment, she enters the classroom, and with her look at Junichi, everyone understands that they were going through their first couple crisis. So the president Mitsuki decides to create a special committee to prevent the school's favorite couple from breaking up. But while they were talking about it, Yuuhi arrives and tells them that they shouldn't worry because they weren't going to break up. On the way home, it starts to rain heavily, and Junichi starts to run to avoid getting wet, but he is intercepted by some men who tell him that they are from his father, and that he must accompany them on his orders. This leaves Yuuhi and Manato alone at home. So they start making curry and talking about how their friendship has evolved since they met, and how Manato thought Yuuhi was really weird at first. After dinner, they have a serious conversation about Junichi, since Yuuhi has perfectly realized that Manato is deeply in love with him. So she tells him that from tomorrow on she will no longer live with them because it would only hurt more for the three of them. This makes Manato feel very bad, and he confesses everything he feels for Junichi and apologizes to her for ruining their engagement. While this happens, Junichi arrives at the place where he was going to meet his parents, and it was true that they were waiting for him. But those men who escorted him were actually enemies of his parents, but they used their technology to quickly save their son and continue doing missions around the world. So Junichi must return home alone. When he arrives home, he meets Yuuhi and Manato, and his until then fiancé begins to claim many things for not being honest with himself and deciding who of the two he really loves. So after slapping him and punching him in the nose, he leaves the Nagase's house. After Yuuhi left home, Junichi still can't decide on his feelings for Manato. Suka's sister, who is also very confused because of him, decides to leave him too. Thus, in the blink of an eye, Junichi was living alone again as he did in his Geno Killer days. This doesn't go unnoticed at his school, where everyone realizes that the love circle between Jun, Manato, and Yuuhi has exploded into the air. This is also noticed by Professor Subishita. Meanwhile, we see that Manato is staying with Megumi, who confesses that she loves her very much for her good heart and tells him that she knows perfectly well what she feels for her brother, but that it is he who must decide who he stays with. On the other hand, Yuuhi was staying at Karen's luxurious house, where they are having a sleepover. Meanwhile, Junichi is alone and very confused by everything that is going through his head. Later that night, Professor Subishita decides to visit Junichi and takes him for a walk to advise him to be a man once and for all and to make the decision that makes him happiest. But Jun's doubts are too dark, since the prejudice that Manato is his sister does not let him think clearly. Back at home, he is sitting in front of the TV and begins to have hallucinations with his past self, the one who created the legend of Geno Killer, since he always fought at school with everyone. And this one tells him that he should not feel alone, since he was always alone, and in fact, he did not even want Manato to live with him at first. These words upset Junichi, who tells him to shut up since Manato is very important to him. And after an intense debate with his version of the past, Jun finally confesses that he loves Manato, and it is with her that he wants to be forever. The next day, Junichi arrives at school with a decision fully assumed of what he must do. Everyone sees him radiant and with a confidence that he had never shown before. Then on his way to the classroom, he meets Yuuhi, to whom he greets quickly, and then continues on his way. He didn't say it directly, but it was clear that he hadn't chosen her. At the end of classes, Junichi waits for his sister Manato and talks to them alone. He tells her to please come back home with him, and she tells him that she will only do it if he gives her a good reason. And at that moment, Jun gathers his courage and looking her in the eyes says, "You must come back because I love you."